I feel like almost everyone knows who Wade Wilson is because of how much publicity his murders have gotten and how closely the media followed his trial. But a lot of people are unaware of all of the red flags and victims leading up to such a devastating end. So I want to go back a few years before the murders occurred and look at how it was able to get to this point before this monster was finally stopped. Because the psychology behind this case is honestly terrifying. The manipulation and social conditioning, the way that victims were treated when they did come forward, all of that played a role in him getting away with violent criminal behavior for far longer than he should have, and it resulted in the loss of 2 lives. So fall of 2018, a woman named Kelli Matthews is scrolling through a dating app, as so many of us have, and comes across a profile of a man named Steven that catches her eye. In fact, she's looking at it thinking, this has to be some sort of a catfish or scam or something. Because according to Kelli, he is exactly her type. Tall and handsome and covered in tattoos. So they end up matching on the dating app, talking, and then getting together for a first date. And when they met, she was shocked to find out that he's actually real. She describes their first date as like something out of a fairy tale, right down to the fact that at the end of the night, he asked her permission to give her a kiss. And I know a lot of you are thinking right now, okay, bare minimum. And that's fair. But little details like that are important here. Because for one, I think there is an assumption that danger always shows up looking like danger. In this case, from her standpoint anyway, he showed up looking like something out of a fairy tale. And while you might be thinking that's just common courtesy to ask permission to kiss someone on a first date, to Kelli, it felt like being treated like a princess.
I was super happy. I thought, this is it. I'm going to marry this guy.
So it's important to understand that monsters choose their victims for a reason. So needless to say, they hit it off. They start spending a lot of time together. Within 2 weeks, he asks Kelli to be his girlfriend. And of course, she says yes. Not too long after that, he starts complaining to her about his roommate. They're not getting along and asks, could I move in here? And Kelli agrees to that. And she said at first, things were really great. He was helping her out around the house, cooking. They were getting along. I never do hear anything about him having a job. Then one day she comes home from work because she actually had a job and she's looking for her laptop. She can't find it anywhere. She asks Steven, have you seen my laptop? He says no. So she's baffled. What happened to my laptop? Well, he finally admits to her, I took your laptop, I pawned it, I really needed some money.
Steven admitted that he pawned my laptop because he needed money. I was just so mad that I called the police and I filed a police report.
So she is, understandably, pissed. And she does the right thing. She reports it to the police. The police track down the laptop at a nearby pawn shop, and this is when she finds out that Steven is not Steven, that his name is actually Wade. And he says, oh, Steven is my middle name, and I use that on the dating app because I have some crazy exes that I don't want tracking me down, which, man, if you ever hear that excuse, run. First of all, why do you need to be hiding from exes? And second of all, using a fake name on a dating profile is not hiding you from anyone. They think that it is. That's a major red flag. So you can see the red flags are already stacking up. So Kelli, thinking about how great things were before this incident, she decides to forgive him and continue the relationship. Shortly after that, a friend of Kelli's needed a place to stay, so she invited this 18-year-old woman to temporarily move in with her. One day they're all sitting around, they're talking about dogs, and she mentions a specific breed of dog and that she knows someone who has a litter of these puppies that breeds them, and they're discussing, I guess, they're really valuable dogs. Later that day, she goes to work, she comes home, and her house is full of puppies. Wade and this 18-year-old have gone and stolen puppies from this person that Kelli knows. And Kelly's like, what the hell? Why did you steal these dogs? What is going on? And he says, I need to sell these dogs. I need money. So they take pictures of the dogs, put them on Craigslist. The owner of the dogs sees the photos on Craigslist and recognizes Kelly's house in the background and reports this. And Wade then tells Kelli, you need to take responsibility for this because I have a criminal record and you don't. And if you don't do it, I'm going to kill your dogs. So she calls the police. She says, I'm the one that stole the dogs. Then she goes, turns herself in, and she spends a short amount of time in jail. But when she comes home, Wade is gone. The woman is gone. They have left together, and they have also stolen her gun. And she reviews her camera and sees them on the front door camera kissing and whatnot, and realizes like he's been cheating on her with this woman living with her. And now they've taken off together. So she reports her gun stolen. And at this time, Wade is now out of state, so there's nothing they can do about it. They said if you can get him to come back, then we can arrest him, but otherwise, nothing we can do here. Some time goes by. Wade ends up calling Kelli and saying, I'm sorry, I want to come home. And she says, okay, and she offers to pay for his bus ride home. So once she gets him home, she calls the police, says, he's back here. Come and arrest him. So they do. He goes to jail and he's calling her and crying and he breaks her down. Finally, she says, fine. She gets him out of jail and she says, we can work on this, but you can't come and live with me. Like, you need to go to rehab because it's been uncovered in this time. He's got drug issues. So he says, okay, no problem. I've got a friend in the Keys and they're going to help me get into this rehab. Well, remember, he met Kelli online in fall of 2018. Well, later that year, he met a woman named Courtney online. And so he's been living a bit of a double life. So he calls up Courtney and says, I'm looking for work and I was just thinking, why would I look for work here? I could come to the Keys and look for work there if I can live with you. So she says, sure. Again, remember, monsters pick their victims for a reason. They know what they're doing. You can see how this man really used his looks, his charm. I mean, how charming would you have to be to get away with being a homosexual? But like Courtney said, I said, sure, you can come and live with me because I wanted to be with him. I wanted to be with this handsome, charming man. And you can see how he kept using charm and manipulation to get back into Kelli's life. I mean, she was doing the right thing by reporting these incidents to the police, then still getting manipulated by him and allowing him back into her life. So Kelli begins driving him towards the Keys per the plan that he's headed to rehab. And this drive ends up turning into an absolute nightmare for her, where Wade essentially kidnaps her in her own car.
I was really scared. He started strangling me with both hands. I froze. I didn't know what to do. I was like in full panic mode. This person that I thought loved me was putting his hands on me.
He physically assaults her and then later rapes her. When they finally get to the Keys and he meets up with Courtney, Kelli drives home as fast as she possibly can. She goes straight to her mom, tells her what happened. They report it. They go to a hospital. She has a rape kit done. She does everything that they tell you to do as a victim. And that's what makes this so frustrating. That everything that happens after this point was completely avoidable. The detective that was assigned to her case is an absolute waste of space. Watching the interview footage from where he is interviewing Wade, I'm like, could you have broed out any more?
All right, brother. You said you did some ugly thing. I understand.
When I first started watching it, I'm like, okay, he's playing good cop, because you'll see them do that where they're acting very empathetic and they do it to gain trust and build rapport with the person being interviewed.
But I do have to give you the option to tell me, hey, I didn't kidnap, I didn't rape, and I didn't assault that woman. Yeah. And I have to believe you. Yeah.
No. He was literally just broing out. Like, I don't know if what it was giving to me was like he was a bit jealous of Wade and his height and his looks and his charm. And
all I need to hear was that. Mm-hmm. He said he beats me, he does this, he does that. You know, and I'm like, well, I just don't know. You're doing great. I don't know. No, you're doing great and you're a smart man. You know, you're on the right track.
When he's walking, the detective is walking out of the room and Wade is like, yeah, I'm a personal trainer. If you know anyone that like needs a really good personal trainer. You are here accused of rape, kidnapping, and assault, battery. Like, are you kidding me? But then I'm like, am I really surprised he behaved that way based on the way that the detective was treating him? Big shocker, rape kit, never processed, charges never laid. The detective said, nothing I can do because there were no witnesses. There's a reason why they do rape kits. That is the witness. How often are rapes witnessed? That's why there's evidence. There can be evidence without witnesses. It is just, that detective is partly responsible for the death of 2 women. That is my opinion. I just cannot even imagine what she went through. I mean, scared for her life and to be brutalized and then treated that way. Even listening to the interview, the things that he makes her say, the way he's speaking to her.
What do you mean by assaulting you?
He had sex with me without my consent.
Explain that to me. Help me understand what you mean.
Pulled my pants down and stuck it in without my consent.
Stuck what?
His penis.
How that man kept his job is like beyond me. Because not only have you failed this victim, but you've left this man free to victimize more people. And that is exactly what he does. Now, luckily for Courtney, they lived together for a brief time and then he ghosts her, which is the best case scenario. I know for her, it sucked in the moment. She was upset. This man just took off without a word, but obviously looking back now, she is very thankful for that. Wade had moved on to his next victim, and his next victim was not another woman. It was a man. While working at a carnival, Christopher Lane met Wade.
I was in Inverness, Florida, working on a carnival when I first noticed a hot guy working at a pizza stand.
And this goes to show you that he was not just seeking women, he was seeking ideal victims. So in keeping with the manipulation, once again, the love bombing takes place. Their relationship moves quickly. Wade starts staying with Christopher in his RV And then one night, Wade suggests that they do some drugs. So they do, and Wade is like tripping out in the middle of the night. Christopher's like, yo, you need to just calm down. Let's get some sleep. You need to rest. Things escalate, and Wade ends up attacking Christopher with a knife. Wade stabs Christopher several times, and at some point leaves the RV. Christopher quickly runs and locks the door, lays on the floor, and never goes to the police. The next day, Wade apologizes and they stay together. You can see the pattern of his manipulation. So he's, as much as he is a liar, in these situations, he doesn't deny. It's his tactic to be truthful. So he was honest with Kelli about stealing the laptop. He took accountability for stabbing his boyfriend. He had a way of making people feel sorry for him. And those apologies, it was like something that people could grasp onto because they clearly wanted the relationship with Wade. He had charmed them enough. They wanted to be with him. And they gave themselves permission to believe his apology, to believe that he was truly sorry, that it was all a terrible mistake. And they seek empathetic, highly empathetic people on purpose. He's choosing people willing to see that wounded version of him. He does something horrible, and then he appears soft and vulnerable by crying and apologizing and appearing remorseful. But you can see through this pattern that every time someone opens that door back up, the danger actually escalates. And that's why I think it's so important to really look at what led up to the tragic murders of Christine and Diane. Because when you look at that history, just the couple of years before, you can see how preventable it was. When you review that long list of harmed people, he was leaving a trail of destruction and then just being allowed to move forward. And just to be clear, in no way am I saying that any of his victims are responsible for any of this. This just goes to show you how much women especially are expected to absorb so much. We are taught to be understanding when men are struggling. We're taught to see the potential in people. We're expected to not be too harsh, to not be judgmental, to be understanding. But then when something like this happens, everybody wants to know why we weren't more suspicious. Well, we were conditioned not to be. You can't condition women to give people the benefit of the doubt and then act like you're shocked that dangerous men are out here benefiting from that. And what we saw here with Kelli when she reported that very violent assault against her, it's like the burden of proof is placed on women. What more could she have done? She came forward right away. She made the report. She had the injuries. She went to the hospital. She went through the entire process. And still, Wade walked away from that situation without the kind of accountability that could have stopped him from causing further harm. Now, we don't know what would have happened for certain, obviously, had the case have been taken more seriously. But there's no way that you can look at this and not assume that had her case been taken seriously, that things would have worked out very differently. Because quite obviously, this is not a man that just went from nothing to being a murderer overnight. This was violence that escalated over time. And I know it's so easy in hindsight to look at someone like Kelli's situation and say, oh, I would have never forgiven him for that. I would have never let him back. I would have never let a man I hardly know move in with me. But there's a reason why being a Monday morning quarterback is an unpaid job, because hindsight is always 20/20. But when you're in the situation and psychology is at play, things are not that simple. It looks so clear cut, but it is not. When you factor in truly scientifically how our brains work, and when you have trained professionals letting these victims down, It's very clear where the responsibility lies here. And I know a lot of people too looked at him in court and were like, that would make me take pause. That would cause alarm. But he did change his appearance a lot. Like after the murders took place, he looked much more, yes, he was tattooed, but he looked much more clean cut. And he presented himself as, a good guy raised in a church-going family. And of course, in the beginning, he was wonderful. Kelli said he moved in and things were great. If danger looked like danger from the beginning, a lot less of this would be happening. That is a case of a wolf in sheep's clothing. And yes, once her brain became fixed on this relationship is real, this person is real, even when he did bad things, it was conflicting with what her brain had already settled on believing. And I know that that is hard to understand, but this is such a great example of how that happens and how powerful the mind is. And so what I think people should really take from this case is not the obvious that Wade Wilson is a monster, but to understand how he kept gaining access to people. How was he able to get them to trust him? How was he able to get them to forgive him after harming them? Because there's really no power or growth in just saying, oh, I would have never allowed that. The power comes from understanding the manipulation. And this really doesn't have anything to do with intelligence. Highly intelligent people get manipulated every day. So next time you see something like this that you think that would never happen to me, instead of being closed off or being judgmental, take it as a learning opportunity. Because you never know whether learning something from a tragedy that happened to someone else might save your own life.